One day, a house pet, a dog, was standing at the window, barking at a passing mail person. The dog's owner, irritated with the dog, "Why do you always bark at the poor mailman?" Now, this is terrible. The dog says, "So that he won't break into our house and steal all of our food and toys." The owner frowns, confused. "Why on earth do you think he would do such a thing? He's never tried that before." Rolling his eyes, the dog replies, "Well, of course he hasn't. You're welcome." Often we can be just like that dog. Out of our worries, out of our fears, we scream, we do everything possible to fight off the bad things that might happen to us. But sometimes a male person is just a male person. They don't mean harm. But this day and age, it seems like the alert system in our bodies is up, isn't it? We kind of walk out the door with physical, mental, and maybe spiritual armor, ready for a fight. So this kindness that we're talking about, this campaign we're in, this gentleness today, it seems to have been left in the dust recently. Paul, throughout the New Testament, says, "Let your gentleness be known to everyone." You know, gentleness is not necessarily a value even in good times. You know, it's not something that people put on their resume. Gentle. It's not a higher ability quality. It doesn't come to mind right away. But stop me if you've heard this story before. The story features a culture that treats people like commodities, valuing them only insofar as they produce wealth. It describes a society that closes ranks against the outsiders, concluding that the outsiders and those ideas are detrimental to established values and incompatible with this country. It tells about a system that regards punishment and incarceration as easy solutions, preferring the blunt weapons of shame and quarantining and arresting, with no chance for dialogue, restoration, or even hospitality. Does that sound familiar? Unfortunately, yes. But this particular story is actually referring to our Bible story, Acts chapter 16, that we just heard a few minutes ago. A scene in which Paul and Silas, two traveling missionaries, if you will, find themselves publicly stigmatized by a culture that is threatened by their very presence. We've been through it here recently in this country. Mass shootings, terrorism, political rhetoric on all sides. This is what Paul and Silas were also going through in the city of Philippi. A lot of people love the book of Philippians in the New Testament. It's one of those often studied. It's a neat book, but sometimes you forget what happened in Philippi when Paul was there. It really wasn't a great place. Paul makes it sound great because his approach to the ministry, his heart for God and for these people, comes out in that book. But the city was not very welcoming to others. They established a church there, and if you're familiar with his story, it started with a woman named Lydia. This is one of those many stories of how the gospel, again, was moved on and forward and established by women. We celebrate that. We love that fact. But in this group, on this reading today, there was a woman who was enslaved to her masters in the city of Philippi. She was used by them to do what we might call fortune telling. So she has this ability, and she's making money for it. And the money and the profit is going to her masters, basically Sounds like human trafficking. This ability has come to her. It seemed to be a blessing, but it was really a curse to her. Now, Paul, as they're going along, this woman who has this gift is kind of announcing to everybody, these two people are missionaries. They've got a message from God for you, for everybody. And she just keeps going on and on. Speaking kind of truthfully, you might imagine a parade, if you will, going through the marketplace. She must be yelling fairly loudly because as we hear in the story, Paul is annoyed with her. Kind of put up with it for a little bit. But then he turns and basically says a prayer for her, hoping that God would release her from this psychic ability that she has. And it works. She quiets down. She is set free. But as the story goes on, the owners of this woman are not very happy. Their money-making person is gone. And we don't know what happens to this woman, but like many of the stories from Jesus in the New Testament, we can see when people are set free, they are no longer oppressed. We might imagine that she is like, oh, finally. You know, she's not hearing things, she's not hearing voices, she can't be used by these people. She no longer has this gift and this ability. She has this inner freedom she didn't have before. But when the owners saw this, who pays the price? Paul and Silas. So this is why they were arrested. We've kind of, the next part of the story you might be more familiar with because they go to jail. But let's just look at that first part. There's obviously a lack of kindness happening here. It's not a very comfortable situation. The parade feels a little uncomfortable for everybody. And maybe Paul was a little too loud with his annoyance and his prayer for her. As a result of this, him and Silas are arrested. So these people want revenge. And Paul and Silas pay a heavy price. Publicly flogged, beaten before they're even taken to jail. But let's look at these people who are being beaten. Gentleness, Paul says, in a place that had previously mobbed him, stripped him, beat him. Gentleness is my approach, Paul says. In this city with a strategic military and economic outpost, with a strong government abusing and oppressing people like this poor woman, Paul's approach is gentleness. Gentleness in a place that is under the authority of armies, people like Julius Caesar, crucifying people. Gentleness in a region that birthed Alexander the Great, who by the age of 30 had built an unparalleled empire and conquered much of that part of the world, funded by gold and silver from Philippi. This place has some money. Gentleness, Paul says, in a place steeped in historic tradition of violence. So people would notice gentleness and kindness, wouldn't they? In fact, this gentleness is even a bit subversive in a culture that is all about strength and intoxicated with violence and power and weapons and war. Right now, as we come in here on Sunday morning, we might feel these exposed nerves that we're just on the edge because we're in that same place right now. This rawness we're surrounded with. People losing jobs. A government that can't agree on a budget. Military being sent into cities in America. So they drag Paul and Silas to the marketplace, and they start to create this story about them. They don't even talk about the woman. They just create this animosity for Paul and Silas, saying, look at these two. They're criminals. They're horrible. They need to be arrested. They're causing problems in our wonderful city. We need to get rid of these two. They're foreigners. You see, they're creating a storyline. Again, they're not even mentioning the fact that they've lost money because of Paul and Silas. They've lost a lot. But they create this story of the outsiders, manipulating the storyline into a frenzy of hatred. People are yelling, yes, get rid of them, arrest them, beat them. It's a horrible time. And we're seeing it on our very streets here as well. The story of gentleness. At their school carnival, some children won free goldfish. And so the parents went home and said, I guess we need to get an aquarium. I think I've been in this place before. That was a party gift that we got to take home. The aquariums range from $40 to $75 to hundreds of dollars. But this family found a discarded, used 10-gallon display. They bought it. Those fish looked great in their new home for the first day. But 2 days later, the first one died. 3 remained, enjoyed it. Monday night, another one died. If you've experienced this, this happens, right? There's many reasons this happens. We don't know how to feed them. The filter takes them. It's just a bad situation. Long story short, all the fish died. So the person goes back to the store and says, this aquarium killed my fish. What happened? And these people who are used to these stories, the first thing they said was, did you wash the aquarium? Yeah, I washed it. I washed it with soap and water. That's what killed your fish. You can't wash the aquarium with soap and water. Yeah, but it was dirty. I had to scrub it. The thing was just trashed from the last people. Totally dirty. Well, what we call that are killer soaps. The soap is what killed your fish. Sometimes we think, again, that we're cleaning, we're doing the right thing, but we're being harsh. We might be causing damage. We didn't ask for help or advice. We assumed. Paul says, let your gentleness be known to everyone. We're in this campaign, this kindness campaign, to get retrained so that we don't become like that harsh soap in that aquarium. We want to do right. We want to do the right thing, but sometimes we come off harshly. But what we're not saying today is that you're a doormat, that you're just going to let people walk all over you. You're going to let people stomp on you, that you're going to let people bully you. That's not what we're saying. This gentleness, this kindness is assertive. It's intentional. It's coming from the Spirit of the Lord. It's a holy gentleness and a holy kindness. It's done with prayer. It's not coming from a superiority place. It's done voluntarily, asking for God's help. Chuck Swindoll, well-known minister, author, says this: in our rough and rugged individualism, we think of gentleness as weakness, being soft, and maybe even spineless. Not so, Swindoll says. Gentleness includes such qualities as having strength under control, being calm and peaceful when you're surrounded by a heated atmosphere, emitting a soothing effect on those who might be angry, looking for ways to diffuse, possessing tact and strategy of gentleness and kindness and dignity. Instead of losing, the gentle gain brings to us relationship. It builds a bridge with people. Gentleness breaks the cycle of violence. Again, it's not mild-mannered. It might come off as resistance, but it doesn't come off as angry. It doesn't come off as retaliatory. It doesn't come off as I'm right and you're wrong. Paul and his friend Silas were terrorized and tortured, put into jail. Now, the rest of the story is pretty amazing, right? There they are in shackles. We're talking old-fashioned shackles. I don't even know if it was a cement floor, probably dirt. And there they are singing hymns. I don't even know if I could get to that place of singing in jail, but that's what Paul and Silas are doing. Maybe if Jacob was there, we'd be singing hymns, but we need some direction. But they're singing hymns. They're praying, knowing that God can work even through this. Most of us would just be totally caught in, this is not fair. Where's my lawyer? Right? And this jailer hears all this. He probably thinks they're crazy, singing and praying in there. They're probably going to be beheaded or crucified. And there they are, singing and praying. Well, what happens? An earthquake happens. Most of us don't know that feeling if you haven't been in California, but an earthquake shaking the building so much that the chains came loose. The shackles came off. The jail doors opened. So they, and some other folks who are in the jail, are able to leave. The jailer's response is to want to kill himself. He's afraid he's going to get in trouble. He's going to get busted. It's his fault. He's going to be held accountable. It's his job to keep these people there. We don't know about the others, but maybe the other people ran out. But Paul and Silas stayed there for a minute. And Paul, in his goal of being gentle and kind, is concerned for the jailer. Right? I'd be like, I'm out of here. He's concerned for the jailer. He says, no, don't harm yourself. We're still here. It's a huge step of faith right there. Trusting in God each moment in this most vulnerable situation. Concerned for the heart and life of the jailer. Offering kindness and gentleness. Right? Subversively, unexpectedly, surprisingly. They have scars from their beating. They want to go out and get showered and get a meal and go back to their safe friends. No, don't hurt yourself. We're still here. So out of this gentle, graceful response, the jailer befriends them. They befriend the jailer. And instead of going to their own place, Paul and Silas, they go home with the jailer. Again, another odd choice. They go to his house. They offer relationship to this person. Every soul matters. And you know the rest of the story. He and his house became believers. And this person named Jesus, this is after the time of Christ, so now we're talking about believing in Jesus after he's gone, because these followers are being amazing examples and God is moving through them. The subversive kindness is working miracles. There's a movie coming out. I will close with this. It's a movie out, I think it just came out Thursday or Friday. It's called Soul on Fire, S-O-U-L. The reason I know about this movie, two parts of my life kind of cross paths, which is unique. So I'm actually doing research for this message this week, reading background materials, etc. Suddenly I see the advertisement for Soul on Fire come up. And I remember, I'm like, why do I know that name? My friend Chris, who's a musician, tours around, plays all kinds of places like the Ark, etc., has written a song that's in that movie. So then I press on it. I go to watch the trailer. I'm like, wow, this looks amazing. My friend Chris, he's blessed with, you've never probably heard of him. His name is Chris Trapper. The best part of his making and living as a musician is songs getting into shows and movies, royalties. And honestly, I've not watched all the movies. He's got songs in several things. I'm not that faithful of a friend. But this one, I texted him. I said, you just, crossed into my career here. So we can put that picture up, Sue. The story about Soul on Fire is it's a true story. And this guy on the right of the picture, as a young boy, elementary school age, suffered a horrible accident. I don't know the details. His whole body was burned, 100% of it. It's a miracle he survived that moment. He gets to the hospital and he's dressed up like a mummy, just white bandage all the way from head to toe. Long story short, at that week, Jack Buck was a well-known broadcaster for the St. Louis Cardinals, the voice on the radio for 50 years for that team. For some reason, he heard this story when he was in town. He felt so inspired that he went to the hospital that night, walked into the room, and just sat there. The kid is not speaking. I mean, he's breathing. And he whispers encouraging words. He says to the young man, the man, his name is John O'Leary, when he was a boy, he says, John, wake up. You are going to live. Keep fighting. And he just sat there for a little while, and he left. He was told by the hospital, the boy probably won't make it through the night. He comes back the next day and does the same thing. And he keeps coming back. He eventually meets the family. He just felt inspired to do this simple act of kindness, and he came during those first few months, those first critical months of John's recovery. Amazingly, John used to listen to the radio and knew that voice because he listened to the games. He didn't know him. He didn't recognize it. He said that he remembers feeling like this voice is very familiar. Who is this? And later, of course, they get to meet. And later on, he brings them autographed baseballs, and famous players are coming around. It sounds like a great movie. And then John's career later on in life is inspirational as well. A simple act of kindness. John says at that point, he feels like it saved his life. He just needed this outside voice of encouragement. Of course, his parents were there and people and family, because this outside voice just impacted me. Wake up. You're going to make it, kid. Gentleness changes the world. It might just be one word of kindness to one person. Paul and Silas, right? One person, this jailer. And then that spreads. Kindness takes off. It's the right choice in the right moment. If you're praying, if you're looking, if you're asking, God will reveal those moments and those people and those places, whether it's where to leave your bag, your kindness card, or whether it's someone who needs you just to listen to them for a minute. You may have absolutely no advice, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you're just going to be there for someone. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. Amen.